Welcome to, yes. Welcome to another session, part of this Malta Film Week, which obviously our highlight of this week will be next Saturday, the Malta Film Awards. But as I have seen even yesterday and earlier this morning, we have a set of workshops, a set of very interesting discussions. I was able also to follow part of the discussion that was held earlier this morning, creating a world-class film industry. Now, during the afternoon, we're going to tackle another issue, another theme, financing our stories. As you all know, finance and the funding of films is very important when it comes to developing a film production, a TV series, and Malta is still very young with respect to the indigenous film production. Its television production is quite low budget, as we have witnessed also throughout the years, and we still have to compete quite further in order to make a voice in the international market. And having a healthy indigenous audiovisual sector provides benefits both economically and even culturally. If we succeed in attracting and catering for incoming productions, why does it seem that we are not able to do so for the incoming indigenous sector? And that will particularly be the main focus of the discussion that we will be having here today with our panel. How can the government help to grow its own domestic TV and film sector in the coming years? What financial aid schemes? There are already financial aid schemes available for local SMEs and for production houses in the film industry, so we will also see what we have already available in the market at the moment. And when specifically considering film finance, what are the challenges and the opportunities for those in this sector? And in this first panel that we have, because this discussion will be split into two parts, we have the first panel and we have the second panel, we invite the entities and stakeholders here to highlight what financial schemes we have available for the local film industry. The second panel will highlight the gaps, the existing challenges, and also the opportunities that can arise from further collaborations. I will start by introducing our first speaker, Susan Ronald. Susan is the funds manager at the Malta Film Commission. She will open today's session. She is basically responsible for the administration of the funds which we have locally. And she will also tell us a little bit more about the schemes which are offered by the Malta Film Commission to local productions seeking finance and audiovisual works. She has held this post since 2012, so that's almost 10 years. Great experience. Her focus is on managing specific financial aid schemes, namely the financial incentives for the audio film industry, the audiovisual industry. Susan, can you walk us through the schemes that we have available locally for any film productions, for any companies who would like to develop their arts?
Okay. Hello, everyone. A lot of faces I know, a lot of faces I don't know. If you're familiar, some of you obviously are very familiar with the schemes we offer, but obviously I'm just going to lay it out so that you have a clear picture for those who have no real clue of what we do. So basically everyone knows there's the Screen Malta, which is previously known as the Film Fund, and that is obviously government funding. It's regulated by state aid, and it's regulated by de minimis. State aid can also be GBA, but at the moment, Film Fund is regulated by de minimis. We offer 600, and as you know, in the previous discussions, there's been discussion to obviously raise this, and obviously cross our fingers, we're hoping that will happen too. But as it stands today, the budget is 600,000, and we offer a number of financial aids that will get you from the beginning to the end. So how does that work? So there's obviously the writer's grant. You want to write a script, whether it's for television, whether it's for documentary, whether it's for feature film. We can give you up to 30,000 to basically write it. Here's the money, write it. That same money, you can use it as well to get a mentor, get a research, go to an international workshop, and obviously take your script to get it developed. It's not a training grant, it's a writing grant, so you have to go to a workshop where you're presenting that project. So that's the writer's grant. Then we have the development grant. Obviously, the development grant is there to help you to go to the markets. You can go and look for financiers. You can go and look for co-producers. You can go I'm running and blabbling. You can obviously look for your cast, you can do auditions. So there's a whole number of things that you need to do when you're at development stage. And that we give you up to 50,000. And obviously, from once you've finished development, then your next goal is obviously to want it to go into production. Once you're ready from pretty much all that from before, you can apply for a production grant. Now, we have what is called the New Talent Production Grant. We offer 5,000 euros. Basically, that's if some youngster has come out of MCAST or has come out of university and they need access to money and produce a short film that they've never used money before, because obviously at school, at college, you do it without money. So here's a chance to spend 5,000 euros and make a short film. The next step up is then you want to develop and grow and do a short film. And there we give you 30,000, up to 30,000. Feature film, we go up to 200,000. And documentaries go up to 50,000. Then we have a new talent scheme, which is 50,000 all in one. This is new, and no one has really taken this up yet. We have the festival fees. So obviously, once you've made your film or you made your project and you want to take it to the festivals and put it into the festivals, you have to pay. So we also give some money towards that. Obviously, if you've got to be marketing it guerrilla style, you've got up to 20,000. And obviously, if you've put your film in a competition and you get selected, you can apply for 5,000 or more, depending on the level of the competition. All these funds, we have one call a year, maybe 2 calls a year, depends on the availability of funds. Applications are received. We obviously send these to an independent panel. Panel assesses them. You get a chance to pitch and speak with the evaluators. And obviously, once you've been selected, you will then be notified together with a contract so that you can go through and accept or otherwise the award granted. The way the money is given, we give it 40% on signing, 40% midway, and 20% towards the end when you've actually delivered and given us your final works. We do help sometimes with people who ask us, listen, we're a bit tight and stuck with advances, can you help? But in a nutshell, that is pretty much what Screen Malta does. It helps you guys to write, develop, and produce. Then obviously we have the cash rebate. Now the cash rebate is very well known for us getting the films to Malta. So we're always saying, come, shoot here. Here's the carrot, sort of like we give you a reimbursement on the spend that you do in Malta. This scheme, though, is accessible to, at the moment, it's limited to some Maltese productions. So, I mean, those Maltese productions that did do feature films. And again, there's a technicality as well, which some people will know and understand. There's the term difficult audiovisual work. Now, currently, the criteria of difficult audiovisual work is what it is. And basically, it allows the local filmmaker who meets this criteria to get, instead of a 40% cash rebate, to get a 50% cash rebate. So apart from getting the film fund, so you have your budget and then you have your finance plan. So part of your budget can be financed through the film fund. Obviously, it's limited and restricted to up to 200,000, or obviously how much you get, because sometimes we don't always give 200 because there's limited funds, so some people might get a little bit less. But then obviously, then you have access to the cash rebate, and that is separate, and that's under GBA rules. So you're going to get the rest of the gap. You're going to get 40 or 50% back on that chunk which is eligible. So obviously there's eligible expenditure and there's ineligible expenditure, but majority it's eligible expenditure. What you can't do is you can't double dip, because obviously if Film Fund were giving you, €1 for this, you can't then go and claim this on the cash rebate and get 50% because we gave you 100. So we say you can't claim for same eligible costs. So you've got the Film Fund element, then you've got the cash rebate element, and you can get 50% back. But then obviously what you're going to have a problem is cash flow. So we do help a bit with the advance, and we give you a 10% advance when you start shooting. And with prior discussion, and if you need another advance or an advance at the end, speak up front, and if we can help, we will try to help. Obviously, we're not a financier, it's public funds, and so we have to know in advance so that we can plan with the capital commitments. Now, apart from that, then there's the co-production fund. Now, the co-production fund, we all know it's not working, and obviously there's the will to make it work and make it happen. I can just sort of say how it is at the moment, just to give you the principles. So the co-pro, and it's not really the film commissions per se, it's film finance under MIMCO, but we help administer it. So co-production will allow you then to access equity, or if you go to the bank and knock on the door and say, listen, I need gap financing because I've got film fund, I've got cash rebate, but I'm stuck with this amount of money, but only for co-pros, so I'm stuck with that bit of money. Can you give me the difference? Can you give me 100? Can you give me 200? Obviously, the bank is going to go, ninny, or is going to say, mortgage your house or mortgage your life or whatever. But obviously, we don't want you to do that. So the goal is that you can use the co-production, the bank guarantee one, to get that money, and we'll act as the guarantor. Obviously, there's the other option, that is the equity one. So by going back to the guarantor one, it's up to 200,000 because it's de minimis regulated. And then obviously you've got the GBA related, which is the equity one, which is up to 350,000. Obviously that is through an investment, through MIMCOL, through film finance. So that money needs to be returned in the waterfall. And I'm going on, and I'm being told I have to sort of like stop. So basically, you're looking with us is you've got the film fund, the cash rebate, and the co-pro. And you can overlap and take as long as you don't double dip. And some other schemes do allow you to get as well the difference through other schemes. And obviously, I'll let the others speak up to tell us more about what they offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan, for providing us with a brief overall of the financial schemes that PhilFund, that the Malta Film Commission provides. We'll be looking at other stakeholders, what schemes they also offer. And we move on to 𝗪𝗘𝗟𝗠𝗞, who is the Director of Funding and Strategy within the Arts Council Malta. So we'll also see what the Arts Council Malta provides from their end. You, 𝗪𝗘𝗟𝗠, in your role, you oversee the funding process and the coordination of various strategic areas, both within the Arts Council Malta as well as the public cultural organizations. I have two questions for you, and thank you for joining us here today as well. Could you briefly expand on the role of the Arts Council Malta and what role it plays within the Malta film industry, within the local film industry? What role does the Arts Council see itself in the future years to come?
Okay, thank you. The minute I heard you talk about my role, my heart started beating, sorry, all of a sudden. Thank you. Yes, so when it comes to Arts Council Malta, it's not directly responsible for the film industry, the audiovisual industry, but we feel there is space where we could support. So I have to say a lot of different initiatives and actions took place, but a constant for the past 7 years was the actual Cultura TV fund. No new faces here. I'm sure at one point or another you did have some form of contact with the Cultura TV fund. This fund, out of all the schemes that changed and they were redesigned and stopped and started, this Cultura TV fund has been a constant for a whole 7 years, supporting 3 particular strands. One, when it comes to drama, the other is documentary and cultural programs. It's a constant when it comes to criteria, when it comes to the way it's been used and the way it offered its support. In fact, the idea of this Cultura TV is not to actually have a huge production and go at the other end of the world. Having said that, there were productions who actually got that experience, but the idea is to offer funding for private TV stations and private production houses to actually experiment and go, in those areas which you wouldn't take the risk of going. So yes, Cultura TV will allow the creatives to actually go that, not extra mile, I wouldn't say, it's not the right word, because in this industry you do extra miles, but to go into those spaces that you wouldn't take the risk going with other schemes or with other opportunities. So, yes, we do invite private TV stations and private production houses to actually collaborate. It's based very much on co-production. As Arts Council per se, it did have other initiatives like co-producing. It has never actually produced, you know, product, but there has been on all the occasions practically they were co-productions. So yes, this is a space, Kultura TV, for applicants, beneficiaries to try something different, try something new, to experiment. And we did have productions who actually made it, like when we say made it, because they went also on an international level, like 𝗙𝗜𝗟𝗧𝗔, Limestone Cowboy. They all started experimenting through the Kultura TV. Eventually, they also sought help from the film funds, but the experimental part started, yes, from Kultura TV. The different strands obviously carry different weights when it comes to finance. For example, when it comes to drama, it is a 70K. When it comes to documentary, which, by the way, we highly promote the documentary element, and there is a very big need of documentary experimentation. That is 40K, and then there are the cultural programs with 25K. Now, it doesn't stop at funding, and this is the part I'm very proud of, because when it comes to Kultura TV, we offer also mentoring. So along the years, we had different mentors involved. So you have the critical friend, you have that person who actually you refer and you conversate as producers, as TV stations, to actually better the product or take it a step higher. We had different personalities in the mentoring process. Today, in fact, there is particularly Ri Chakraborty, who she's currently mentoring the 2021 beneficiaries, where there are these conversations, and we get very positive feedback. So it's not just about receiving the money and that's all about it. We try to build that relationship and a creative relationship to better the product. And it's no longer about monitoring, but it's about mentoring, being that critical friend, which I believe in this industry is very important. I mean, if there are any questions on this regard, I'd be happy to take them. To conclude, basically, this fund is a competitive fund. It is a structured fund. So when I say competitive, there is a specific deadline. This happens once a year, round about mid-year. It's round about June, July-ish area. All the guidelines will be available online. There is a 6-week open call. It's standard. And you can actually apply online. And basically, what we do then, there are expert evaluators. There is a pitching time where we invite applicants to actually pitch their project. And what do I mean, verbally pitch their project? Because everything would be written on the application, but you do not stop at that. It's important, the verbal pitch, not to repeat what's on the application, but to actually pass on the soul of the project, what can't be written. You have to actually get the evaluators into the picture and make them feel part of it, so they feel, yes, this should be supported. There is space for mentoring, because as I just said, mentoring forms a crucial part. So when it comes to this part, then there is the ranking, and everything is public. There are the guidelines online, results online, it's transparent. Then there are the more darker scenarios where you get applicants who weren't funded, and one would want to understand, and I recommend that very much, when you pitch and you don't make it, whatever fund, whatever scheme, try to understand why, how could you improve? And it's very important, don't leave it to the first time, because first time, the chances are you don't necessarily make it. You can't give up. You have to say, look, I keep trying. And usually, those bidders who actually kept trying once, twice, third time, they get the nick of how to do things. Yes, I'm rounding off. Thanks, Wayne. And they actually start excelling in proposing. So that's very important, not to leave it for the first time only. One last thing, and I close. We offer a service which is free. It is a brokerage service, and we're happy to keep offering this, where we can actually guide whoever comes along on, how funds to choose. Sometimes we direct them to Suzanne, and Suzanne does the same. She directs them to us. Sometimes we stand to disagree, that we agree that we disagree, but there is a collaboration. There is, and with most of my colleagues over here, there is a relationship, a bridge. Collaborations are the be it, so this is very important. To conclude, really promise, Arts Council Malta has actually launched the draft strategy for the next 5 years, strategy 2025-26. Basically, you will understand that the film industry falls around in the different areas. For example, when it comes to status of the artist, which we are tackling. When I say strategy 2025, I really mean that this is a document not made up of words and paper, but it's made up of actions. And your input, guys, is very, very important. That's the only way forward. Listening, receiving input, discussing. At the end of the day, this strategy is not of Arts Council, but it's a sectoral strategy. It's ours. It's ours. So we need to make it so. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. That was most insightful, and it adds also to the overall film funding picture, which was highlighted by Susan earlier on. We move on to our next speaker, Mark Camilleri from the National Book Council, Malta. Mark Camilleri has been recently appointed as Executive Chairperson of the National Book Council. He's quite new in this role. He has been serving for 22 years in the education sector. He has also authored form crime novels in Maltese, a number of short writings, and even a book for children about the history of football. The National Book Council is a public association of publishers and writers that caters for the Maltese book industry with several important services while striving to encourage reading and promote the book as a medium of communication in all its formats. Mark, the role of the National Book Council, the schemes that it has available, the local partnerships, the collaborations it holds in place to encourage and promote writers. Perhaps you could briefly expand on the role that the National Book Council holds in the film industry and the vision that it holds also for the future. I believe we also, Ryan is here. We benefited from a scheme of the National Book Council years ago. I took part in. So the National Book Council also has funding schemes for local producers. Mark.
Very good. Thanks for the invitation, first of all. So as you were saying at the beginning, there is a huge relationship between films, obviously, and literature, considering that huge number of films have adapted screenplays from original source. So that creates a huge relationship between the movie and literature. I'm a lover of both, books and movies. I'm in this role, which helps me envision both of them, because we have one of the funds which I'm going to speak about later on. And obviously, we cannot discount the power of both mediums, and obviously, because as the National Book Council, we believe a lot in the local film industry. Now, we're not like Susan's remit. She has a huge number of funds. We have one in this case. The main fund for filmmakers from the National Book Council is the NBC Film Adaptation Fund, which is a development of a previous fund, which one of them, I think, Wayne, you were referring to. It was a previous fund for adaptation of short films, which ran between 2014 and 2018. Obviously, the reason why we moved towards feature film adaptation fund was that obviously feature films attract larger audiences, first of all. They do justice to the literature being adapted, because you have a longer length. And third is that they are more adept at finalizing or putting in practice our objective of bringing Maltese literature to wider audiences. So these are the three main objectives behind the fact that we moved towards a film adaptation fund. Now, the film adaptation fund is a biennial call. Our first call was in 2019. Second call was issued last year, 2021, and next one will be next year in 2023. Funding intensity for the feature film fund is 100%, with a maximum allocation of 200,000 euros for the one winning project. Like Marian mentioned, it's a competitive fund, where we have an education board which meets the interest parties and they brief and they pitch their project. And like Marian was outlining in her brief, it's very important that they are detailed and they have a vision when they come across the education board, because that's very important. The fund, our fund, which I was talking about, covers development, pre-production, production, and post-production. Now, obviously you can find, and I'm going to mention it, all our info and all our guidelines are found in our website, which is 𝗙𝗘𝗞.org.mt. Our website covers both Maltese and English versions, so it's quite easy that you go on the feature film adaptation fund, you find all the info and all the guidance there for all prospective candidates. Now, there are three, basically, you can put it this way, three main requirements which should be kept in mind by all prospective candidates, which are that the film must be in the Maltese language, as it should reflect the original source of the material. Because obviously our main objective of having a feature and film fund is to promote the Maltese literature. Second is that it's open to applications to adapt films from novels which are either National Book Prize winners or shortlisted novels. So that's another requirement which should be kept in mind. And third thing is that applicants, when they apply, must present an option agreement of the author with the author of a novel and or holder of a copyright. So when they apply, they need to have obviously the option agreement with the author, with the unique author. This is for a minimum of 30 months period to adapt the novel then into a feature film. So these are the basic main requirements regarding the adaptation fund, the film adaptation fund. Now, you mentioned the film vision. Obviously, and I keep repeating this, National Book Council is not an island. We're a government entity. Ours are state funds. We're not just, just an island, and we're just by ourselves. Collaboration is something which is our objective. So collaborating with the Malta Film Commission, for example, is something which we're looking forward to have, to keep, and to build on, basically. Another thing for our film vision is that the fact that we're committed to keep this film adaptation fund for now and for the future as well. And the third thing is that, obviously, because we know the power of books and the power of movies at the end of the day, right? Our objective is that Malta has a lot of stories, local stories, written in Maltese. So, and there's a huge wealth in that. And that our objective is to keep having as much stories as possible, transmitted to as much audience as possible. So basically, those are that's the only fund we have, but it's a very important fund because people then can come across, can reach or can meet literature across a powerful medium, which is film, which is cinema. So basically, that's it.
Thank you, Mark. It's an interesting fund because it gives life to Maltese characters that we read in literature. So it's a very interesting fund that adds to the overall production funding also that we have available in Malta. We move on to our next speaker, 𝗙𝗜𝗟𝗧𝗔. She's also my co-host on our morning TV show, so I find the awkward moment of having to introduce her here during this panel discussion. She comes from the TV Production and Content Fund. She is a lawyer by profession. The TV Production and Content Fund is a recently launched new scheme aimed at assisting the development and production of content created specifically for TV and online platforms. An investment of at least €500,000 is to be used to develop and produce high-quality, creatively ambitious, and commercially viable content. Can you please expand on this fund, how it would support the Malta film and TV sector, and if there are any plans of any type of this funding to continue to be made available, and whether it will be increased in the future years?
So, hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Wayne, and good afternoon to everyone present here during this important workshop, I say, because it directly hits the heart of the productions, the financial aspect. As you rightly pointed out, Wayne, the TV Production and Content Fund offers that financial assistance to the audiovisual companies, the registered audiovisual companies, during the course of the TV production or the TV series. So the fund is open to any type of production. It can be a TV series, it can be an online-based production. So it's quite covers different types of productions. This fund is managed by the minister within the office of the Prime Minister. The main aim is to give the companies that extra push. You know, I was listening to Marian speaking about that extra push and the extra mile that producers need to take during their productions. And this actually gives the producers that extra little bit of fresh air during the course of their productions. Being a small country that we are, and the fact that, well, let's face it, we lack resources as well in this sense, obviously provides a lot of challenges. So the funds which are offered by this particular fund can be used in all aspects. So it can be used at any stage during the production and to any expense incurred during the production stage. The budget is quite big. Last year it was €800,000 actually, and it is obviously de minimis regulated. There were two types of funds: the equity fund with the maximum funds given was €100,000, or else the normal application wherein funds are given up to 20% of the total budget claimed by the producer, with a maximum of €75,000. Obviously, the funds will be given eventually upon presentation of VAT receipts, because obviously, as my colleagues pointed out, there has to be visibility in the funds which are being given and the funds being awarded. Obviously, there are certain criteria which need to be followed. It is a public fund, so there has to be some bureaucratic stages which needs to be followed, and it is understandable. Even I myself, when I read the application and the criteria, I said, oh my God, how bureaucratic it is. However, it's important that there are a lot of stages which the producers need to go through, because we are dealing with public funds. So definitely there has to be visibility, there has to be clear criteria. I mean, there has to be transparency in all during the course of the award of funding, because we need to build trust with the producers. They need to know that we as a board, as an evaluating board, we follow rules, we follow transparent rules, and they have to be obviously clear with everyone. And it's great disappointment when there is an application which we need to refuse, because our punto di partenza as a board, and I can speak on behalf of all the board members, is let's accept everyone's application. That is the punto di partenza. However, obviously, as I said, there are criteria which we need to follow, and sometimes, unfortunately, there are certain applications which need to be refused if they do not follow that particular criteria or does not follow the rules established in the application. As a whole, this fund, as I said, offers financial assistance, because we need to understand, and I'm really happy that such workshops occur. I believe this is the first time that such workshops are being held, because seeing everyone under the same roof, helps, to integrate more and to understand more the process and the difficulties and the challenges producers face. I myself present a program every morning, so I can understand a little bit of the difficulties and the challenges you guys find. So definitely every euro helps, everything counts. So I believe that more funds need to be offered, so that if we want a good level of production, funds need to be given and awarded. So that is something which really is really close to heart, and obviously I really believe that year after year, more funds need to be awarded. I'm not a prophet, so I would not know whether the next year, actually this year, because we're in 2022, and the fund closed on the 31st December 2021. So unfortunately, no more applications can be accepted. However, as I said, I'm not a prophet, so I would not know whether applications will open again. However, I believe that the policymaker is aware that there are a lot of challenges during the course of productions. So I believe that the more enthusiasm shown by producers, it would help more the policymaker to award more funds to producers as a whole. But I believe that in order to sustain this market and be a career-based market, there has to be funding and there has to be help from all aspects as a whole.
Thank you, Elaine. That is another additional fund that complements to the funding schemes that we have already mentioned. 𝗙𝗟𝗓 from the Creative Media Desk, Malta. Joseph has been active in the culture and creative industry for more than 25 years, both as a performer and also as an arts manager. He has won several vocal international competitions abroad and also served as a jury member for international choral and singing competitions. Joseph, the Creative Media Programme has a budget of almost 1.5 billion euro, offering various funding schemes aimed towards the audiovisual sector. And in its new plan, we are seeing a focus on increasing the diversity of co-productions, drawing on the wealth of European talents and pushing the boundaries of what is possible. Considering that there's this huge amount of funding available, can you walk us through the EU Commission's program and the incentives that it offers to local and film TV industry? And considering also the huge competition that you have, because this is obviously available and it is eligible for all European member states.
Yes.
How can local producers access this scheme?
Good afternoon. Yes, as you were saying, Wayne, this is not a local fund. This is not administered by any government entity in Malta, but this is governed, administered by the EU Commission. So the competition is European-wide. The EU Commission is obsessed with this co-production, cooperation between all the countries. So right now, I think, we also discussed it with the director of the Culture Directorate, that he's more of an expert in this field, that organizations in Malta should go and cooperate with other European countries and do co-productions. The funds for the media are divided in 4 sectors, which mainly 3 are the most, I think, important. Are the content, audience, and business clusters, and each have a different action. We call it not a fund, we call it an action more than a fund. This is the terminology used by the EU. And each address a particular field, a particular gap. I think what I was hearing today, the film fund from Arts Council, from the 𝗙𝗟𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, and from Elaine's fund, the TTV, and content. I guess because if we cooperate together, if somebody applies for these funds and then applies for the EU funds, just to make the EU more confident that they can fund your project, because there is the co-funding element, which is normally, there are almost 19 actions, so there are a lot. I'm not going to enter into each one of them today. We have also distributed a leaflet to have also our contacts and know a little bit about these opportunities, so that then you can contact us and come to our offices and discuss your projects and discuss how these can be funded. But one thing is I'm noticing is that the local funds can be used as the co-funding percentage, if the rules of the local funds permit that. But the rules of the European Union, of the Creative Europe, permit this. So there's even a very big will from the Culture Directorate to issue, we're working on it, to issue co-funding for the Creative Europe specifically. So right, for the Creative Europe now, it means also not only for the media strand, but also for the culture strand and the cross-sectorial. To issue, we're working on it, to issue a co-funding fund, so that organizations in Malta will not be at a disadvantage when coming for the co-funding, because we have discussed also with the sector, with the stakeholders, that one of the problems is finding the other 40%, because these are big funds. For example, the budget for the last call of the co-developments was 5 million. So these are big funds, and when doing the calculations, 40% of 1 million is 400,000. So we understand that although there are 600,000 being given, getting 400,000 is a big headache, I guess. So I guess also these funds, these local funds, can help in accessing bigger funds and co-produce with other bigger companies from the EU that are more maybe in the eye of the EU better companies to get the funding, but they need us, the companies maybe from the smaller states, to co-produce with them, and that can be a formula for success. So I urge you to make some find out, make some research, think, also check which organizations you can cooperate with. There is the portal, the Funding and Tenders portal, which is the portal for applying for all the EU funds, and one can search for partners there. We can also sometimes receive information from other Creative Europe desks about partners searching for a particular company doing this or that. So even keep in contact with us, and let's hope that because there are big funds, and Malta is not tapping, unfortunately, is not tapping in these funds. So Malta is losing its share because these are competitive funds through the whole Europe, and other countries are getting the funds. So it's good for the industry, for the local industry also to tap these funds. So because these create also big opportunities for the co-producing. There are also funds for festivals, film festivals, for subtitling. There's the Media 360, Minislate. Maybe it's also could be possibly a good opportunity also. So make a little bit of a find out, write to me, and we will discuss also your projects so that we can start the ball rolling, because the EU promised us the work program for this year has already been issued. Not like last year, which came very late, but this year the EU Commission seems to be more on track now, and they promise that by the first quarter the deadlines and the calls will be issued. So let's not wait till when the deadlines are issued, but one could start and doing the homework so that we can, hopefully, Malta taps these EU funds.
Try to set the ball rolling early.
Yes.
Thank you, Joseph. Very interesting. It's a very interesting scheme as well. It adds to the overall schemes that we were discussing. We have about 14 minutes left. So I noticed you wanted to make a small intervention, quick few seconds. So then we move on to Ayla to conclude this first panel. Quick intervention.
EU-wise, for the Creative Europe funds, unfortunately, applying on our own directly, we've not been successful. But if you co-produce, there has been 2 Maltese co-productions that have applied for Creative Europe with the lead partner, and they have been successful in getting EU funds. So these 2 projects, they had a Maltese co-producer, and they managed to get EU funds as 2 different entities. So there is possibility. Obviously, it's a bit harder because the criteria is harder. But if you read in between the lines, if it's saying, oh, you must have an experienced track record, that's why the key partner who applied has the track record, and you are, as a co-producer, you are benefiting.
With a bigger track record, who's using more world-famous directors, actors, and then co-produce.
So co-producing, again, for Creative Europe, their eye is on co-producing, and obviously coming together, getting the partners to meet the criteria.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Joseph, our last speaker for this first part of the panel. 𝗙𝗟𝗟𝗧𝗔, did I pronounce that correctly? Yes. Director, Film and TV at 𝗙𝗟𝗟𝗧𝗔. Ayla, we left you as our last speaker intentionally because you've heard all of our local schemes available. You are the director at the accountancy firm that I just mentioned. It's a UK-based accountancy firm. You have worked exclusively within the creative industry sector for the past 4 years, and you provide financial, accounting, audit, taxation advice, and consultancy to a range of clients in this sector. First of all, my first question will undoubtedly be related to, considering all that you have heard, maybe you can provide us a comparative analysis by comparing what we have locally to the UK, and whether do you think that we can improve in some sectors? Do you believe that perhaps it could be better if there is just one fund available for our small nation, and whether it would be less bureaucratic and better to access schemes? And whether you also seem to support, and your opinions on the vision that was discussed yesterday, the Malta Film Vision 2030.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a range of different funds available, and I think that that is actually a really good and a really healthy thing. It's important to have a healthy marriage between the various sources of funds and between the various schemes available. And when you have a pool of money spread around various organisations, it is beneficial to have coordination between those funds and make sure that they're all sort of under one agreed strategy. That doesn't mean that there's just one one sole issuer or awarder of funds, because what that can then do is sort of hinder creativity and hinder maybe the different cultural directions that film and TV can take us. So having various bodies issuing separate funds is a really good, healthy thing. You don't have the same group of people who will have, you know, inherently their preferences and terms of what they like to see for media, you get a full range, but just having that one agreed strategy that everyone's working towards will help make the best use of those funds. So I think that's a really important thing as well. Also, what's really good is having these funds available to help domestic producers. There's been a lot of talk about inward investment, which is really important, and where you want to build a really strong film and TV sector in a country. It undoubtedly needs strong inward investment and foreign investment, but that will only really be created when you have a strong domestic industry as well. You know, that inward investment is going to come and use the crews, the personnel, the ideas that are here already. So building up that domestic industry will just help bolster that inward investment as well. It's also a lot of talk about what can be done to help bolster that domestic industry in terms of training and the infrastructures. There's the new soundstage being built, which is great, and that will help hopefully the domestic producers here, but also attract more inward investment. Both great things. We've also talked about new training courses, which is also going to help, but just making sure that there is that appetite and appeal for people to enter a sector that is available 12 months of the year. It's not so seasonal. You do, if you want younger people to want to aspire to enter this industry, there needs to be a career for them, ideally 12 months of the year here in Malta, as opposed to learning the skills, building themselves up, and then heading elsewhere. They can obviously go for experience, and that's only going to be a great thing, but wanting them to come home, back to Malta, and continue to grow their careers here. You asked sort of how it compares to other international incentives and things out there, and it is quite hard to compare. Each jurisdiction has its own incentives, its own awards, its own schemes. And in a lot of these other countries, there is a lot more money to play with, so it's not quite a like with like. But it is important that you have these funds available to help support a growing industry here. And in terms of the Vision 2030 that's been put forward at this wonderful Malta Film Week, I think it's really great. It's definitely helping support a growing and thriving, hopefully, industry here in Malta. And in terms of the funding available, it is, you know, it might not be huge amounts in terms of an industry that does cost a lot, but if those funds are put to good use now, it will only bring in more and generate more funds in the future.
Ayla, thank you. You were our last speaker for this first part of the discussion. I thank Susan, Marianne, Mark, Elaine, and also Joseph, our esteemed guests present here today as well. We bring our first part of the discussion to a close. We will move on to the second part of the discussion. It will also focus on funding and financial schemes, but beyond the schemes that we have discussed already. A short break. We will be with you within a few minutes. Welcome back. We're still discussing financial aid and funding of films, the second part of this discussion, the second panel we have with us here today. We will look at film finance and beyond the schemes that we discussed during the first panel. We have invited several entities and stakeholders to discuss the existing challenges and the opportunities that can arise in this film sector as well, that arise from future collaboration ultimately. We start with Anthony David Gatt from Malta Enterprise. Anthony, welcome.
Thank you for the invitation.
Anthony, you are the head of external communications at Malta Enterprise, and through your role, you support the aviation and digital economy sectors, including film and TV. Malta Enterprise attracts new foreign direct investment, as well as facilitates the growth of existing local operations, such as the Malta film sector. Can you perhaps expand on the role of the Malta Enterprise, what role it plays within the local market, and how it can aid and support the local film industry?
So first of all, thank you for having us, and thank you to the Malta Film Commission for their excellent organization of the event and the whole weekend, the awards. Malta Enterprise is the country's investment promotion agency. So our role, there are a number of elements to our role. First and foremost, we advise government on economic policy. We are there to help all businesses based in Malta, be them Maltese indigenous, but also foreign-owned here in Malta, of different sizes, from self-employed all the way to small businesses and also larger businesses. And a final role would be that of attracting FDI, foreign direct investment, to our shores. There are a number of sectors that we deal with, amongst which aviation, manufacturing, etc. But also, and most importantly for our conversation today, the creative industry at large. So yes, film, and I will take the opportunity to specify the ways by which we can assist the industry per se, but also digital games, the technology which is of assistance to this industry, and other elements which are quite new and emerging, which might also come in handy or become part of the future of this industry. DLT, non-fungible tokens, which we will have a session tailor-made on this in a couple of days as well, here as part of the week. But maybe there are some artists who would say, but yes, Malta Enterprise, how do they really appeal to us with their incentives? Aren't they directly for a particular type of business? And the answer is no. The answer is that if you're a self-employed, if you're a practitioner in this industry that provides services to film, to TV, and there's also a longevity of your input, then there is a discussion to be had with Malta Enterprise. And this is the appeal that I have today. I can spend time discussing the different incentives that we have to continue the list that were in the first part of the panel. But the message is, if you have an idea of a business, of a new business, or you're already doing a support service to the industry, and you might have never thought about Malta Enterprise, there might be an angle where we can assist. For example, if it's about equipment, you're rendering a service in film that needs purchasing of an equipment that's there for the long term. If you are providing a craft service to the industry, all the way to post-production, so effects, and any angle that has a tech introduction to the industry. And there are different methods by which we can assist. There are grants, there are loans, there are repayable advances, and we as Malta Enterprise would be very happy to sit down and have this conversation. So basically, that's that. What I suggest is for self-employed to reach out to Malta Enterprise, but also if there are certain opportunities that are wider than this, if there are companies, international companies that you are in touch with, that are looking for a European base for their operation, for a back-end operation, or for example, developing their offering when it comes to user experience, for example, or user interface. Because the angle there is technology. There are different angles by which we can have a discussion together. One of them is, as I said, technology. Another element is education. So academies that then fit in to the other pillar, which is education, which is another pillar that Malta Enterprise looks after. We work in tandem with the Malta Film Commission because it is part and parcel of showcasing what Malta is. So the image that we project together as Malta Enterprise and the Film Commission, the companies that we attract to Malta, helps in creating the narrative of what country we are today and also what type of country we want to be in the future. So I believe that that would give a bit of an idea how Malta Enterprise fits also with this particular industry.
Thank you, Anthony. During this second part of the discussion, we will also be opening the floor. So all of you interested in suggesting any comments or if you would like to ask questions to the panel, we have available also some time allocated for questions after, obviously, all speakers finalize their interventions. We move on to Ǩeneth Farrugia. Ǩeneth Farrugia from BOV, Bank of Valletta. He has joined Bank of Valletta in 1985. He is now the Chief Retail Banking Officer and also sits on the group's executive committee and various bank committees. His responsibilities span the retail banking market sector to include micro business, covering all retail and micro businesses, products and services. He is also part of the industry in Malta related to funding of the chair of the Malta of Asset Servicing Association, which represents the funding sector of the industry in Malta, chairman of Malta Investments PLC, which is also listed on the Malta Stock Exchange, and he has obviously a lot of experience when it comes to banking. Perhaps one will ask, how does the Malta filming industry and the banking sector, how they could collaborate and work together? It's very interesting because an important source of funding from local producers, they would have to take loans, they would have to go to you for consultancy. And this is an interesting discussion, and even your intervention could be quite interesting because from your perspective, from the experience that you have, how could you aid, how could you support local film producers to access grants, and whether we would explore the possibilities of perhaps having something which is exclusive for local TV producers to access in order to finance their work? Kevin.
Thank you very much. First of all, good afternoon. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you for the Malta Film Commission for inviting me to be with my fellow panel members. Intrinsically, if you look at the banking sector in Malta, and if you look at Bank of Valletta in particular, it's not that the banks in Malta have really positioned themselves to support this industry. This industry was never on the horizon for the banks to finance. And if you look at simply the balance sheet of the banks in Malta, they have opted to finance traditionally the traditional sectors such as manufacturing sectors, the service sectors, so the traditional sectors that you will see on the balance sheet of banks. When it comes to the film industry, however, banks, I feel, have a role to play. It's true that banks have not developed the functional expertise to fully understand this sector because of the way that traditionally banks have serviced other economic sectors in Malta. But there's always the opportunity for a beginning in this regard. And if I look at the support that banks today offer the film industry, it's very limited. And I must be candid with you, it's very, very limited. They're not into the financing of film productions because they don't understand the sector that well. And my appeal is an outreach for the likes of the Malta Film Commission and the operators to come together as a body, as an association, to reach out to the banks so the banks can fully understand the nature and the typologies of businesses that require financing. Because in my experience so far with film production companies, it's been limited to traditional banking services. So the provision of payment services with their requirements, because clearly banks today have their obligations to ensure that payments that are being made are legitimate ones and tick all the boxes. I mean, that's the obligation of all credit and financial institutions in the marketplace. But when it comes to financing, I think the opportunities are two-pronged. One, to support the development of the infrastructure supporting the industry. So, beyond the direct support to film production companies that want to launch an initiative here in Malta, and we're seeing the numbers growing. So if you ask me, and what I've seen so far in this industry is that, and this takes me back, you've gave a bit of an overview of my background, which gives away my age. So it's 3.5 decades in banking. But I remember in 1994, when we sort of catalyzed the financial services industry in Malta, there were no operators here, just a handful of banks, very plain vanilla banking. If you fast forward that, for the last 20 years, the industry has developed markedly. With insurance operators, with asset management operators, asset servicing operators. So, the traction can be quite rapid and fast. Okay? So my appeal is reach out to the banks in Malta to explain the typologies of companies, the type of security that can be offered by companies. And I think strategically we need to join a bit the dots here. Banks traditionally have ventured into risk sharing. So if you see, for example, if we take a very recent development with COVID, right? So the banks have teamed up with the Malta Development Bank to provide very competitive financing to operators in Malta to manage the COVID situation. And loads of funding has gone down that route. I mean, the bank alone has financed some 400 million in credit financing to different operators in different sectors, in the hospitality, in the manufacturing, in the service industry, in various sectors, right? And this is where the operators, such as the credit institutions in Malta, the likes of Malta Enterprise, and the likes of the Malta Development Bank, to come to your point, can develop a bespoke product for the fund industry for risk sharing. And one can widen a bit the thoughts as well to the likes of the European Investment Bank, because we have launched in the market a number of programs such as Jeremy and Jamie, which also are driven by the concept of risk sharing, right? Where the risk of financing an institution, an entity, is shared between the banks on a first loss basis, right? When it comes to the infrastructure, clearly, because it's a tangible asset, banks would look favorably at that. And, if you look at the banks in Malta, and I think COVID has enhanced that, the banks are very liquid. They're very liquid. I mean, for every 100 euros of deposits, they have 44 euros of lending, where the average in Europe is in the region of 60 to 70%, right? So there is a reserve that the banks can utilize to finance operations in Malta. And the banks would definitely be keen to finance operations in the country, in the economy, first of all, because of the important role they play in developing the economy. But more than that, a deposit on the books of a bank today is a cost, right? Because banks pay negative interest rate on deposits, right? So the banks would be keen to understand the nature and typology of businesses being financed, the risks involved, the ability to risk share with other institutions, to support the industry. I've been following this industry recently over the last few years, and I'm really pleased to see a repeat of what the financial services industry went through in 1995, which started growing slowly. We started going outside our shores, promoting the industry, as we are doing in Malta today, and attracting operators to the Malta because of a very sound proposition. I think a quick win would be the fact that banks would be in a position to finance the VAT that is paid back to operators, because obviously collateral is very important for the banks. I mean, it's a prerequisite for the bank to have some form of security or guarantee. And I think in that particular space, I see an opportunity where banks can venture to finance operators on the VAT scheme side.
Thank you, Kenneth. Very interesting to also look at the filming industry, the local indigenous industry, also from a banking point of view. So that was quite a very interesting comment. We move on to Fabienne Rogier from RSM, a consultancy, audit, and accountancy firm. Fabienne has over 18 years of professional experience at the national policy level, multinational level, and in private practice. At RSM Malta, she works at the strategic level with clients implementing organizational transformation. She heads a multidisciplinary team that provides change management services to clients, bringing together businesses, digital, and people expertise. Fabienne, from a business perspective now, what international and local trends are you seeing that will impact funding being made available for future growth and revenues within the Malta film industry? And are there any other international models that you know of or that you have researched about that can be adopted locally by the finance sector to assist for future growth?
Thank you for having us, first of all. We really appreciate the invitation. It's one of the highs of my role to be involved in many different industries and meeting new stakeholders almost every day. Today, what I would like to share with you is we've just concluded a research exercise where we looked at the megatrends. Megatrends are key disruptors in what is traditionally called an industry, which in reality industries are breaking down, silos are breaking down, and today we should be speaking more of ecosystems that are forming between industries that happen to be adjacent or competing, but in reality they need to be collaborating much more to add value and to create new value to markets. And in this case, we concluded the research when we were looking at the future of film. And I think what we've learned, what I've learned from this exercise is that COVID and digitalization have been two major propellers of a very different ecosystem which can continue forming in Malta. We've observed internationally that the market has changed, so premium video on demand, which is consumed anywhere, but particularly because of our COVID recent experiences of quarantine and being stuck at home, we as consumers prefer to buy video at a premium price rather than, of course, venture out to the cinema. It is in fact forecasted, even by Big Four reports, that by 2024, the revenues of premium video on demand will overtake box office revenues. So that, to us, was eye-opening, and therefore we started investigating the new business models, the new stakeholders that are riding this wave. So in fact, we're saying that the market is changing, the market price elasticity is changing, consumption preferences are changing, distribution is changing. So in reality, everything has changed, right? When you look at all of these dynamics and you bring them together, you realize that revenue can be generated from many different alternative collaborations and coming together of setups. The other aspect of digitalization which we have observed is this multi-platform experience that the market is asking us. It comes as a result of the huge surge of social networking, which we do, online networking, which we do. It comes from the multiple intelligent devices that we use at home, on the go, in our cars, etc. And therefore, the market is seeking multiple entry points to the content that they love. It could be a movie, but it could be a game. It could be a park, a fun park, with their characters which they love and that they want to follow. It could start from a book or a comic, but they want to have multiple experiences across multiple platforms. So that means, as in fact Anthony was emphasizing, that the technology component that can propel further this ecosystem, I would like to start saying rather than in film industry, is one which is extremely exciting. I see a lot of flexibility, I see a lot of experimentation that can happen. We've of course taken cue from case studies which we are observing, which we observed internationally through this research. Of course there is the US, there is Canada that are trailblazing the hybrid tech and the co-creation models that I am talking about, the transmedia type of models that I'm talking about. There are exploratory projects where the concept starts from, yes, maybe a producer, but then is opened up for the public, for the market to be part of the story development. And then, of course, there is the production and post-production that has been reinvented through virtual production, and efficiencies gained there. And then again, when it comes to the distribution, through the multiple platforms that we are talking about, again, a very large opportunity for collaborations to happen. So the funding and the financing cases which we've seen are in fact these, where there is, yes, even private investment into these experimentations, but there is also the updating of public funds that positively discriminate towards the integration and co-creation of concepts that can run over various platforms. And we also noticed some EU funding projects on this. There are pockets that have taken up in France and in Germany, sort of speaking closer to home. But in my opinion, it's exciting times ahead with this.
Thank you, Fabienne. Thank you. Very interesting intervention as well. We move on to Antonio Vankovic from Go. Antonio Vankovic is the Chief Commercial Officer at Go PLC, a post he has occupied for the last 4 years. In December, Antonio announced Go's commitment to invest over €1 million over the next 3 years to support the production of original TV content to be aired by the local telecommunications company, exclusively for its customers through a newly launched initiative, Go Originals. Antonio, perhaps you could elaborate on how this incentive works. How this initiative works. There were a couple of the public opinion was that it's very similar to Netflix. It's like a streaming process where it's exclusively available for people who apply for this, but I will leave it up to you to explain in much more detail. This is a very interesting concept because if you, for example, consider Netflix, when you look at the content that they are providing, their approach is to think local, to produce great television, to produce great series, authentic content, that it will rise to the top. I take, for example, a German TV series, Dark. If I'm not mistaken, it's the highest rated series on Netflix. It's German. And the approach that they are taking is, if you're local, you can watch Spanish productions, French productions, German productions. It doesn't have to be Hollywood or US. Good content, and it will rise to the top. So I will leave it up to you to elaborate further on what Go has invented when it comes to this Go Originals, and whether TV productions, producers alike, can maybe find this idea attractive. What collaboration do you see for the local industry to further enhance their projects?
Super, thank you. Very much honored to be as well today, as shared, and to be part of the Malta Film Week. On our end, I think we had 2 questions, so let's start with the first one, the incentive in itself. We want to keep it simple, and we keep it very simple. There's no rule or criteria how you qualify for it. If you have a good script, or you have a good crew, and you have a great idea how to put something together, reach out to us. So we have a conventional way. You can always write us an email and everything else and apply on the web. And as well, some people always jump the queue and they contact us on some social media and everything else and say, I have this great paper in hand. I would really like to materialize it. And we are open to it, of course. It's a start of a project, so it's a minimum of €1 million we are planning to invest over the next 3 years. And if we can just judge it based on the first title we pushed out, which is the Chalet series, it is super successful for us so far. So we're going to keep you posted how it's developing on that end. I think on the second question is a very interesting one. So let me just elaborate how we came to this one and what has happened. So it was April 2020, so when the pandemic hit us really hard, and we got a guidance from the government and all the authorities, be a good citizen, stay at home, so don't go anywhere. Of course, it's not very easy and straightforward thing. We as a telco operator, we knew that there are 2 things that are hitting us. First one was the pressure on connectivity. People need to work. People need to educate themselves. So online schooling and online work was already there. But the second problem that was even bigger, or at least on that, and nobody was paying attention to it, is how to keep families entertained. So kids are not going anymore to schools, or they're not going anymore to kindergartens. So how do you keep the family together at home? So what we did is that we opened our TV platform for everybody. So we took this opportunity as well to return to society, so we gave an access or free access to everybody in whole Malta. What we came up, or what we learned from this thing, is that the content is really king. So we got to see that Maltese subscribers are very much keen on local content. So they really love local content, and if they have a chance to choose between the good international content and local content, they will always opt for local content, of course. Put it in a certain reasonable context, because people like the local stuff, they like the language and everything else. When we went to search for local content, unfortunately, there was not much. So therefore, this initiative happened because we were thinking, okay, we will be the first one in a row. And I really hope that the other operators and as well other companies will follow. And we're going to push that industry forward, because I can promise you definitely demand is there. So demand is existing and it's out there. When it comes to the TV platforms in itself, I think our role is very different to the roles of other operators. So you have a company that is very renowned, and as mentioned, Netflix. So they are proving again that the content is the king. So its content is very much agnostic to the title. It's very much agnostic to the language. It goes over, and if you have a good story, you could get hit up from whatever, Spanish content, and it can explode in wherever, in Western Europe, or it can explode in UK area. So it's really irrelevant to the barriers we thought before. Where it's really getting interesting is the positioning of the content. So today, for regular subscribers, you're getting Netflix, you're getting Amazon, you're getting Hulu, you're getting all the other content subscribers, even Disney themselves. And I think the toll will be paid by the end user, because you will have to have a multiple subscription to enjoy the content you like. So to simplify our position, we are going to act as a content aggregator. So what we do now is that we are looking at the trending titles and what's content available. So at Go, you can find a content from Disney, and as well you can find a Game of Thrones from HBO. So we are really agnostic to the content provider. We are buying the title that is really actual. And I think on the long run, this is how the telcos are positioning themselves, and they should be positioning themselves, because for the regular user, it's going to be much better, because for the less money, you would be able to enjoy great content that you like from the multiple platforms. I think that one like this is kind of going to round it and keep the trend for the future. And when you mentioned the last one of the content in itself, we realized that Malta is, in general, very much talented and very much capable of produce great international blockbusters. We don't see a reason why we would not produce a great domestic titles. So again, I'm really looking forward to the next few years. I think this event is one of the events that is going to boost it in addition, and we are looking forward to seeing prospering on that end as well. I'm definitely, and we are certain, demand is out there.
Thank you. Thank you, Antonio. You mentioned even these streaming platforms. They're capable of working as a tool to break barriers as well. Because nowadays, if you produce something which is very good locally, it will not only rise to the top in a neighboring country, it will dominate all over the world. And we've seen it by good series which aren't American, which aren't Hollywood, Spanish, French, Italian, German, and they've made it worldwide. So the streaming platform is the future.
So we personally hope there'll be soon a good Maltese series that's going to explode, and everybody's going to talk about it. So fingers crossed.
Antonio, thank you so much.
Welcome.
I thank also our other speakers, Fabienne, Kenneth, and Anthony. I now open the floor to the guests who are here today. You have time to pass suggestions, comments, questions towards the panel that we have. Yes?
Hi, good afternoon. First of all, thank you for the organization of this panel. I think it's very useful to discuss the different financing options available for film. I have a few comments and a few questions, so bear with me a bit. So first of all, it's great we're talking about the funds from many different areas, but of course, and I'm going to sound like a bit of a broken record, and Sue is going to kill me for sure, and Leona too. But obviously, until we resolve the issue of de minimis, we can only access 200,000 over 3 years, and that does not lend towards sustainability in the sector. The second is we talk about VODs, and it's really nice to talk about Netflix and Amazon, but the reality is the Maltese language market is too small. And I think we are setting ourselves a little bit up for I wouldn't say failure, but we need to manage expectations. We cannot, at this stage in the history of Maltese film, expect a Maltese language film on a VOD like Netflix or Amazon, so on and so forth, because it is a very small market at the end of the day. The third is, I wanted to direct a question to Mr. Kenneth Farrugia, actually, BOV. It was really useful for you to be on the panel, actually, because I think one of the biggest problems is cash flowing the cash rebate. The cash rebate is a fantastic scheme. It really is. It really works. It's a great incentive. Productions which fall under the difficult audiovisual category can get up to 50% of cash back, but you obviously have to spend the cash to get the cash. And this has been a huge problem for Maltese productions. Approaching the banks, you're told to either put up your house as collateral, which for a small industry like this is absolutely insane, You just don't do it. So yes, my question is, are there actually concrete plans to have schemes in place, perhaps through the Malta Development Bank as well, to be able to cash flow the cash rebate on the basis of, as a guarantee, the cash rebate certificate? So that's a question.
In fact, I mentioned that in my interjection on the panel today, because I feel that that is a quick win in my view, right?
Okay.
I think the only challenge that there was a legal one in the assignment of that cash rebate from government to the bank, right, which needs to be addressed. I think there was some limitation legally as to the ability for the department to do that. But that's something that can be absolutely changed, because it's normal that you can assign a receivable to the bank as a collateral. And clearly, from a credit risk perspective, this would be acceptable to the bank, because obviously we're talking about government here, right? So the credit risk is relatively very, very low. So I think that is really a quick win. And as I suggested earlier, I think it's making the approaches, through a body representing the industry, both with the banks themselves individually, and this I can relate to the gaming sector in Malta. Where they really organize themselves, they set up an association, approach the banks, explain their value propositions, their controls they have in place, and it's worked today because they're bankable, right?
Yeah.
And I think the same needs to be done for this particular sector.
Absolutely, because that's just to be a huge win for local producers. And the other thing is, obviously, we need to get PBS in this conversation as well, because it is fact that in Europe, most films are financed via public funding and also by the public broadcaster. And also, when you go and pitch your films to co-producers, they will ask you if you have your public broadcaster on board. And of course, it is a negative when you say, that's not the way the system works in Malta, because they're not even here in actual fact. So we do need to open up the discussion to also include the public broadcaster. What's happening at Go is very positive, of course. I look forward to seeing more, to seeing what's going to happen over there. Yeah, those are my own comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. My name is 𝗠𝗔𝗟𝗧𝗔. I'm a filmmaker that works all over the world, not just in Malta. And now, the reason I say that is because I'm going to play devil's advocate here a little bit. And I don't want anyone to get offended, because I'm saying it sort of with the genuine interest on what is being said for this whole week. The premise of what we're being told is we want to create a world-class industry, right? We want to promote Malta and make it a world-class industry. So it was great to hear all the different things today, and I have to second what Rebecca said, my colleague and friend Rebecca said, which is all very valid. In fact, she took some of my points. But I'm going to describe, and again, I'm generalizing here, so please don't get offended, certain people. But a lot of the stuff that's been said here today, I can describe as very sweet, because the realities of the industry, if we are looking at making it a world-class industry, is a lot more than what has been said here today. So, my question to the people who are up there today, earlier and now, what commitment are you all taking to help us take this industry and make it a world-class industry? Okay, is it just words, or are we going to move forward, and are we going to commit more money, more energy, more collaboration? Okay, because all these schemes that are up there, the numbers that are being mentioned are obviously, it's clearly that they were done with a small island mentality, because the numbers being mentioned will not get us anywhere. The average TV series on an international scale, and I'm talking average, not high-end, is generally produced with a budget of between 750,000 to 3 million per episode. And I'm not even talking Game of Thrones, because Game of Thrones, we're talking 10 million and above per episode. Okay? So, how are we going to take it forward? I understand these are schemes that were in place, and they work on a local scale. Television, I applaud as well Go for the initiative that they're taking, because we need more of this. But how are we going to move it forward? Unfortunately, I don't have the answer is myself. It has to be a collaboration. So again, to the people up there, I ask, when you introduce these schemes, who are you collaborating with? Who are you talking to? Who are the people on your panels choosing the productions, choosing the schemes, and making it together? Because all the people here, all the stakeholders, over and over again, I've heard it a million times of people saying, but nobody's approached us, nobody's spoken to us. So, and I applaud the Film Commission for taking this initiative and creating the first Malta Film Week to start this debate. And how do we collaborate more? How do we come together and create this world-class industry? And I think Mr. Farrugia was perfect in highlighting how the mentality towards this industry, it was a small island mentality, because, as he said, it was never in their sights as a business. And this industry is a business, okay? And it's big money business from the numbers, as you can tell, that I was telling you earlier. So, and even Iniala highlighted earlier that, you know, different countries have a lot more money to play with. So how can Malta compete with these people? We have to find a way to move it forward. There are ways, of course. We can look at different countries, like other colleagues have mentioned earlier and on yesterday and this morning, like Iceland. You know, even the big 4 countries that take most of the money from creative media, they all started with schemes. Ireland, Iceland, France, Belgium, Luxembourg, Latvia, they all introduced big money schemes to kickstart the industry. Now, how are we going to do this? Are the people up there going to take responsibility and help us kickstart this industry or not? So I'm playing a bit of devil's advocate here. It's more of a point rather than a question. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So, and I hope let's move forward all together. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Anthony, you want to add something?
Obviously, I believe that we are all in the same room. It's not up there or up here.
Completely agree.
And I cannot speak for the Malta Film Commission. What I can describe, however, is the spirit by which, at least as Malta Enterprise, we try and approach. In this case, it's not a new industry or this film industry, but when it comes, for example, to the digital games industry, which in itself, and I understand your point completely, because of the numbers that we hear, and we think that there are large numbers of support, but in reality, they are smaller compared to the amounts that are needed to have a strong success with a movie, with an international movie. The same might apply to the digital games industry. However, I need to share the success or the relative success that we're managing to have with, for example, a particular company that needs to raise 100 million euros in order to release the game, which is a AAA game. It's an independent studio that will be released, and it would be the top of the pops. But when it comes to the support that the Maltese government has provided, we were not looking at a full support. However, a seed support that was crucial and a high percentage of the amount needed at that moment in time. So I'm not saying at all that digital games and movies are financed the same, because I'm sure they're not, and I'm not a specialist on the movie industry, and I will not comment on that. What I'm saying is that I believe the approach, at least from Malta Enterprise, and I believe also from the Film Commission, would be that of increasing the amounts available, at least from at the beginning, at the start. And I believe even the Film Commissioner himself was appealing to bring together and pull together all these different mini pools that are available to really have to punch and be able to be more effective. And I agree with your call on the authorities to increase these amounts, so that then the pools that will go for the individual project would make much more sense. However, there's much more to do than just that. There are VCs, there are other modes how to finance in your financing mix, and that's exactly what we're trying to do as well in different industries. When it comes to helping startups to be exposed to VCs, when it comes to doing events like today, but also Startup Festival that Malta Enterprise has done in November. And also bringing in international events like what we had brought, 𝗙𝗟𝗧𝗔 was a unicorn. It reminds me of what we have today. It was also more practical. It was hip and happening. And there is a role for us as well as government to manage to attract those multiplying events in order to give opportunities, maybe not someone like yourself who is already networked, but others that are coming of age and start realizing how they can make these connections. I assure you that within our own organizations, we as lovers of the creative industry fight our own fights, have our own struggles. And I want to assure that we are committed to continue fighting those battles on your behalf and be partners. Because when I see this company that started with 2 people, now it's employing 17 people, and it's growing, it hasn't reached its target, but it's moving along. And it will go to different challenges. But those are the successes that we want all of us to work on.
Thank you.
Thank you for, obviously, your response. Like I said, I'm playing devil's advocate here. Obviously, we're very grateful for all the stuff that's already there. And the numbers mentioned work on certain levels as well. So if I'm starting, I want to make a short film and stuff like that, they're going to work. But now we're talking about taking it to the next level on the international scale. And my point was that it's creating an awareness, like the Malta Film Week, and that's why I think it's a great initiative, and it's long overdue, that we're creating awareness of what the realities are if we want to take it to the next level. Nobody's discounting the efforts that any government entity or any other private entities is making. Anzi, we appreciate it very much. But now, so my question or my point was, how can we collaborate further all together, obviously, to take it to the next level? That was the point, just to clarify. Thank you.
Kenneth?
I think you made some very valid suggestions. And again, it's a throwback for me, because I've seen this playbook, with the gaming sector in Malta. Yeah, and I don't want to seem to be throwing the ball back in your court. But really and truly, the industry itself is a catalyst for this. Innovation comes from within, right? Some people expect government to have all the magic rules and magic wands to make things happen. The industry, and I feel an industry body is really the catalyst for that, should reach out to stakeholders like government, like the banks, like the Development Bank in Malta, where they need to define the value proposition itself. So these stakeholders understand what's on the table, right? You need to size it, right? You need to define what kind of financing you require, because there are different typologies of financing. There are different channels that can be explored, whether it's the capital market, whether it's a fund structure, whether it's a VC. And, but again, the role of the industry is pivotal in this, right? Don't wait for any government or any institution to come to an industry and say, how can I help you, right? You really need to put your proposition on the table, right? And I assure you will have a listening ear. Right? It's just that this is a new industry for financial institutions, and they need to understand it well, and they need to define the boundaries within which they can support, whether it's the infrastructure, whether it is with cash rebates. I think there are different forms. But I invite you to reach out. That's my message.
100%. That's why it's collaboration.
Fabienne, you wanted to add something?
Hi. Yes, can I just make an intervention?
We have about more or less 15 minutes left, so if we're all concise, we can keep on sharing comments, suggestions, questions.
I'm not going to overextend what RSM can offer and can contribute, but so far we have completed research for the sector, which we would happily have conversations with you and share. Secondly, what we're also doing, because even Anthony mentioned the startups, the coming together of an idea and VC. RSM is investing in that space. We've put together a team of partners that are investing their own time in holding free sessions with the idea, with the concept innovators, looking at how the business concept, the business model could work, and we can use our network to try to connect you with individuals that have high net worth, but also institutions from that regard. So if you think that RSM could also contribute in some shape or form with our business and commercial acumen, which, as rightly so Kenneth said, the concepts need need to be sized and need to be presented, I think we will be more than happy. There's my managing partner there, so I just committed ourselves, George, as you can see. But when there's an opportunity, we just jump into it.
Perfect. Yes, comment.
Yes, hi. Over the past couple of panels and even yesterday, a lot of focus has been put on local productions. And I hope we're at a stage now where we really appreciate that local productions is the way forward to create sustainability in the market. So we're not reliant on foreign productions coming to Malta. Now, in the earlier panel, we spoke about what funding possibilities there are for those local productions, except on the ground we know that the co-production fund is closed, that the other fund, I can't remember what it's called, is also closed, that we're also limited by de minimis. We've been speaking about de minimis for years now, and it would be really good to actually have a time frame when de minimis is going to be lifted. With de minimis, we are restricted to making a film every 3 years with just 200K of funding. And a colleague of mine mentioned this earlier, and we're going to keep mentioning it till it goes away, because we are never going to be able to grow if we are limited by this one factor. So there's that aspect. The other aspect I wanted to mention is, earlier on we were talking about the servicing industry versus the indigenous. They are complementary, they don't have to be exclusive. And through co-productions, okay, that is exactly where they are complementary. And I think we are missing an immediate way of how to provide finance through our actual rebate. The co-production funds is going to take time to redevise, so reject the rebate, make it more interesting for a foreign producer to partner with a local producer to get a better incentive. I'm not talking about reinventing the wheel here. It's done all over the world. So let's do that. That will help raise Maltese producers, give them a place at the table, yet again, which helps cast and crew as well. So these are just factors that I think that we should keep in mind as we go forward, if we want to go to that next level, if we want to make indigenous filmmaking as part of the true Malta story. It's not the Jurassics that make Maltese stories. Those are not our stories. So let us please put this in mind, look at the rebate. There's millions in the rebate that we are paying Maltese taxpayers' money to foreign producers to make their films. Let that Maltese taxpayers' money be used for Maltese films.
Thank you. Any other further comments? Questions? No? Anything you would like to add from your end? Yes? Antonio?
Yes, thank you. Rebecca, was it? I'm always tempted to jump and comment on these things. I think as a creative industry, as well, Colin mentioned, that you should not be hindered by something what is language or title. Today there is technology as well that you can basically do a movie simultaneously in local language and in English. I think Malta is blessed being bilingual, so basically English here is spoken. With English you can almost conquer the whole world when it comes to languages and the footprint in itself. So I think my warm recommendation would be that let not language limit the great creativity and content. I'm definitely confident there is quite some good stories that could swim up.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, you would like to add something? We have a few minutes left. Rebecca?
My point about language is not a negative one. I honestly and strenuously believe the way forward for Maltese film is in the Maltese language. Yeah. Absolutely. Making film in the Maltese language is the only way we can actually compete on the market. To compete in an English language market when our budgets are so low, it's a non-starter. Why would distributors, sales agents pick up a Maltese film in the English language, which they may, if it's commercially minded, if they've seen 20 other projects which are similar to this project in hand, and it doesn't show anything different, right? In my experience, the Maltese language has been a positive, an absolute positive. But when I mean to say, let's not look at only the Netflix, the Amazons, etc. Let's not have these names and throw these names. What I'm saying is that our market is different. We can make a mark on the market for sure, but our market is within film festivals, through sales agents, and then through distributors, and perhaps then we get on a VOD channel, right? So the market is completely different to just saying kind of, you know, yes, it's not easy because the Maltese language market itself is so small. So our market is definitely through the distribution channels which go through those film festivals, right? We can get exposure for Malta, exposure for Maltese culture, exposure for Maltese language through great placement at festivals, then get picked up for the various distribution companies across Europe, across Asia, etc., etc. Maltese film can travel 100%. When I spoke to French distributors and I asked them specifically, what would attract you to buy and pick up a Maltese film? They told me the French like to travel without traveling. So if they see a country which is very specific, very unique, very exotic, he used the word, very exotic, they're going to pick it up. That's what we are looking for. They are not looking for English language titles from us. They're looking for Maltese language titles from us. So that's a positive, right?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good point, valid point. Thank you, Anthony, Kenneth, Fabienne, Antonio. Thank you for joining us during the second part of the panel. We were focusing on, obviously, funding the film industry in Malta. It seems like this Malta Film Week has sparked a conversation, a debate with stakeholders alike, and I hope that it keeps going on for the weeks, years to come. It seems that there is some positive, good feeling when it comes to the suggestions that are being made. We come to the end of this discussion. I urge you to follow the Malta Film Awards Facebook page, where you can also find updates related to other discussions and other workshops. And I thank you for being with us during this Malta Film Week. Thank you.